Imagine this. It's 25 BC. Rome is unstoppable. Their legions span 3 continents. Their emperor dictates terms to the entire known world. But then something happens that shakes Rome to its core. A woman, a black woman, rises up in Africa and does something no one else dared. She doesn't just challenge Rome. She defeats them. She forces Rome to negotiate peace on her terms. Her name was Amanirenas, Queen of Nubia, the warrior who made Rome kneel. But here's what they don't want you to know. If you went to school in America, you've probably never heard of her. Your textbooks skipped her. Your teachers never mentioned her. Why? Because her story contradicts everything America teaches about power and civilization. And that's exactly why you need to know it. The Kingdom of Kush had existed for over 2,000 years. It was one of the oldest continuous civilizations in history. While people in what would become America lived in small tribal settlements, Kush had already built pyramids, established trade routes across Africa and beyond, created a written language, and established laws and governance. Kush controlled vast lands along the Nile River. It had cities, temples, and wealth from gold mines that were the envy of the ancient world. It had an army. It had influence. But by the time Amanirenas came of age, Kush was facing pressure from Rome. Rome wasn't satisfied with what it already controlled. They wanted all of Africa. They sent their armies north from Egypt toward Nubia, expecting an easy conquest. Amanirenas didn't inherit a throne during peacetime. She inherited a crisis. When her husband died, she took control of Kush during one of the most dangerous periods in the kingdom's history. Rome was at the border. Roman armies were mobilizing. The leadership of Kush was fractured. What made her different? She refused to accept the narrative Rome had written for her. She refused to believe Kush's destiny was to bow to Rome. She refused to accept that her people's freedom was negotiable. While Rome assumed Kush would cower, Amanirenas was studying Roman military tactics. She was analyzing their weaknesses. She was mobilizing her own forces. She was preparing her people for war. Around 27 BC, Roman prefect Petronius sent an ultimatum to Amanirenas. Nubia would pay tribute to Rome, recognize Roman authority, and submit to Roman rule. It was meant to be a formality. Every nation complied, but Amanirenas refused. Not just refused, she mobilized her army. Instead of sitting behind walls and hoping Rome would negotiate, she went on offense. She invaded Nubian territories Rome had begun to occupy. Then, shocking Rome, she pushed further north into Egyptian territories Rome controlled. Can you grasp how shocking this was? It's like a nation deciding that instead of defending their border, they're going to cross into the superpower's territory and take what they want. Roman soldiers found themselves being pushed back by Kushite forces. Amanirenas' armies were fighting with desperation, with purpose, with the knowledge that losing meant the end of their civilization. Rome was humiliated. In their official histories, they downplayed what happened. Some Roman historians barely mentioned it. Others tried to rewrite it to sound better. The message was carefully crafted to minimize the embarrassment of a black queen defeating Roman forces. But the war continued. Amanirenas kept pressing her advantage. Her armies continued to move north. They were capturing territory. They were defeating Roman garrisons. They were demonstrating that Rome wasn't as invincible as everyone thought. Petronius realized he had a real crisis. He couldn't dismiss this as a small rebellion. He requested reinforcements from Rome. He prepared for a major military campaign to crush Nubia. But Amanirenas understood something fundamental about warfare. It's not just about military strength. It's about will. It's about strategy. It's about understanding your opponent's psychology. While Rome was mobilizing for an expensive military campaign, Amanirenas was demonstrating that Nubia couldn't be easily conquered, that the cost would be high, that Rome would have to commit enormous resources. Rome and Nubia eventually reached a negotiated settlement. Not a Roman conquest, not a Nubian surrender, a settlement, a peace treaty between two powers. Think about what that means. Rome, the superpower that conquered half the known world, had to sit down and negotiate with Kush, not as victor and vanquished, as two powers that fought to a stalemate and decided war wasn't worth the cost. And the terms? Nubia maintained its independence. Nubia maintained control of its territories. There was no tribute paid to Rome, no Roman authority imposed. In other words, Amanirenas won. Now here's the crucial question. Why is this history completely absent from American education? It's not an accident. It's not an oversight. It's deliberate. Think about the narratives America built its identity on. White civilization is superior. African civilizations never achieved greatness. Black people were never leaders of advanced societies. European power is natural and inevitable. Rome always beat Africa. The story of Amanirenas contradicts all of these narratives. Here was a black woman, leading a black African kingdom, defeating the European superpower of her time. That's not a story that fits into the racial hierarchy America built its system around. So it was buried. It was minimized. It was written out of textbooks. American students weren't supposed to know it. After the peace treaty, Kush continued to exist as a powerful independent kingdom for another 300 years. Amanirenas had purchased not just peace, but time. Kush remained a major trading power. It maintained wealth from gold and resources. It continued to produce art, literature, and cultural achievements. It remained significant in the ancient world. But America's textbooks don't talk about this. When you learn about the ancient world in American schools, you learn about Rome, Greece, Egypt. But Kush? That's relegated to a tiny footnote, if mentioned at all. In the last few decades, archaeologists have been excavating more sites in Sudan and Nubia. They're finding physical evidence of Kushite civilization. Pyramids, temples, trade goods, written records, art, all of it demonstrating a sophisticated, wealthy, powerful civilization. And guess what? These excavations are happening largely outside American academic institutions. Researchers from European and African universities are doing much of this work. If you go to a museum in Boston or New York or Chicago, you might see exhibits on ancient Egypt. You'll rarely see exhibits on ancient Kush. The artifacts are there. The evidence is there. But American museums have kept this history hidden. Modern genetic testing has revealed something that challenges traditional American narratives about race and civilization. Analysis of skeletal remains shows genetic diversity consistent with populations from across Africa and the Mediterranean. But more importantly, they were clearly part of complex civilizations that achieved tremendous things. Yet in American discourse, we're taught that civilized societies were always white, and that Africa was always primitive until Europeans arrived. The evidence proves this is false. You might be asking, this happened 2,000 years ago. Why should I care? Because the way history is told shapes how we see the present. Every time an American student learns about Rome, but not about Kush, it sends a message: Roman history matters. African history doesn't. Every time textbooks skip Amanirenas but cover male Roman generals, it sends a message about who gets to hold power. Every time we're taught that civilization started in Europe and spread outward, it naturalizes the idea that Europe is the center. If you're black in America, you absorb the message that your ancestors did nothing important, that your continent had no great civilizations. That power and achievement belong to other people. That's psychological warfare. That's how systems of oppression work. But the story of Amanirenas shows that Africa had powerful leaders, advanced civilizations, and the capability to stand against empires. This pattern repeats across African history. The Empire of Mali was wealthier than medieval Europe, but is barely mentioned. The Kingdom of Aksum was one of the 4 great superpowers of the ancient world. You've probably never heard of it. The pattern is clear. African achievements are systematically erased in American education. This cover-up continues today. Universities still focus heavily on European history. Textbooks still devote minimal space to African civilizations. Think about what you've just learned. A black woman, 2,000 years ago, led her nation to military victory against Rome. She negotiated peace as an equal, not subordinate. She preserved her people's freedom. How does that change how you think about African history? About black leadership? About power? The story of Amanirenas proves that Africa had powerful leaders, advanced civilizations, and the capability to challenge empires. That history is real. It's documented. It's proven by archaeology, ancient texts, and DNA evidence. But for decades, American education chose to bury it. That choice wasn't neutral. It served a purpose. It maintained a vision of the world where Africa had no power, where black leadership was impossible, where European dominance was natural. Recognizing this history is an act of resistance against that narrative. It's a refusal to accept the simplified, biased version of history America offered. So here's what you do. Seek more. Don't stop at Amanirenas. Seek out stories of other African leaders, kingdoms, and achievements. Share this with people. When your kids learn the simplified version in school, give them the fuller story. When friends talk about history, introduce these narratives. Question everything you were taught. Ask yourself, whose perspective is this from? Who benefits? What perspectives are missing? This is the story white America buried. The woman who made Rome kneel. The history that challenges everything you were taught. And now you know it. Will you help uncover the rest? Subscribe for more hidden history.